Hi everybody, welcome to Dram Daddy Whiskey. I'm Dan, and tonight we're going to be trying the latest of the yearly limited releases put out by Laphroaig. We're talking about Cairdeas, Warehouse 1 from 2022. Laphroaig is a distillery in Scotland located on the island of Islay. Islay is on the west coast of Scotland, and it is world-renowned and famous for its peated scotches. Laphroaig has a very distinct peat profile to its malt. People often describe the peat characteristic of Laphroaig as having a iodine-like flavor, medicinal, or even like a Band-Aid sort of taste. I get grassy notes from it often, but it is a very unique peat profile. Laphroaig has a yearly limited release that it calls Cairdeas, and Cairdeas is Gaelic for the word friendship. The Cairdeas releases from each different year all have a different sort of spin to them. The 2021 Cairdeas release was a cask-strength bottling that was finished in Pedro Jimenez barrels. The 2022 release they're calling Warehouse 1. If you've seen pictures of the Laphroaig distillery, then you've probably seen Warehouse 1. It's the sort of famous warehouse that's right on the water and has the big words Laphroaig right on the side of it, so you can see that pretty plainly. It's in a lot of pictures of the distillery. But I'm a little surprised that they called it Warehouse 1. Because while this release was aged in Warehouse 1 and supposedly is picking up some of those maritime seaside characteristics, I'm not super sure that the proximity to the sea of that warehouse is really going to impart a different flavor than aging in the other warehouses, which aren't quite as close to the sea but are pretty close. The big distinction in this product, as I see it, is that the barrels that were used to age the spirit in here are first fill Maker's Mark bourbon casks. So Laphroaig got a hold of a lot of the barrels that Maker's Mark uses to age its bourbon, put them in Warehouse 1, and aged this distillate there. I don't know whether Maker's Mark is in the habit of selling their old barrels to different Scotch distilleries, but because Laphroaig is making that a selling point of this release of Cairdeas, I can only assume that it's not that common. Or maybe they got some extra special barrels from Makers. Let's see if we can pick up any of that influence. Classic sort of Laphroaig bottle here, green bottle, white label, white cap, and a fairly simplistic little description here on the label. I love opening a peated bottle of scotch because as soon as you pop that cork off, especially if it's a bit of a higher proof, man, the whole room just smells like smoky peat. It's delicious. Okay, so we're all poured up here. You can take a look at the color. It's pretty clear, not super dark at all, which kind of makes sense because this is a non-age stated scotch, which means it's probably not too old. That's one problem I do have with the Cairdeas releases in general, is they don't have age statements. I tend to forgive peated scotch a little bit for not having age statements on their bottles because peat does pretty well with younger scotches, younger malts, but just put the age on there. Why not? There's nothing on the bottle that states that this is a cask strength release. It does come in a little bit higher than most scotches do at 52.2% ABV or 104.4 proof. That's not super high, but because it's higher than most scotches and it is such a specific number, my guess is that this is cask strength, but I can't say for certain. On to the nose. The peat is there. It's almost like a peach with like cayenne pepper on it or something like that. Something fresh and sweet. Once you get past the smoke. Or maybe like sprinkling of cayenne pepper and barbecue on peaches and then grilling them up. It's a spicy nose. I get hints of kind of the classic Laphroaig flavor profile, like a little bit of medicinal, but it's kind of hidden behind these other sweeter notes, and the smoke is a little bit more pronounced than I'm used to with Laphroaig. I kind of like that it's not just in your face Laphroaig. A lot of Laphroaig releases I have, it's just so obvious and so familiar with that nose that it's almost like there's not enough newness being brought to the different releases. This one's different. It's a spin on what you know and love if you're into Laphroaig, with just enough of it there to have some familiarity, but to make that familiarity not the star of the show, which I think is a great direction to go. And I love that pepperiness on the nose too. I don't usually get that from Laphroaig. Coupled with a bit of a, smooth, sweet smell. Let's see what it's like on the palate. Wow. Hit. Whoa. hit with like a green chili pepper on the front palate, strong green chili pepper, to malt sweetness on the mid palate, and then boom, that smoke, as soon as it hits your back palate, the smoke fills it up. And the finish, I'm actually picking up some vanilla, a little bit on the finish. If you can get past the smoke, it's like a creamy sweetness. It's not like a malty sweetness. It definitely is more like a woody vanilla. And the finish also is a little bit, I don't want to say briny, but definitely a little salty, a little bit of umami on the end there too. This has opened up a little bit. The first time I tried it, it was good, but I don't remember having all these different flavor notes and this much development on the palate through the finish. I'd say the finish is about medium on that first sip. It lasted enough for it to evolve and for me to notice those changes, but it kind of fades after that. Which makes you want another drink because it's not too drying either. Second sip. Chili pepper is much less pronounced. I might be getting used to the peat. Sometimes I get like a green chili note from peated whiskeys. More of that vanilla throughout, for sure. And the smoke is there throughout too, but again, once you get used to it, it just becomes a little bit like background noise that you can kind of tune out. But then it does come back in the finish in a nice way. Like the smoke is what lingers along with some of that vanilla sweetness. Third sip, similar. More of the vanilla is coming through. A little bit of the tang from the peat is coming through as well. Less of the classic Laphroaig notes than I would have expected. They're there, they're just kind of subdued. And some of that saltiness, almost brininess, is there on the finish again as well. Maybe a little bit on the back palate, but mainly the finish. This release has taken a lot of heat from different reviewers. Folks who think that there's not enough done to differentiate this from a normal Laphroaig release. Compared to last year, sure, it's not as bold, it's not as high proof, it doesn't have as crazy or intense of a flavor profile. But that's okay. Not every yearly release has to be some crazy swing for the fences kind of moment. I definitely believe that in order for those sorts of releases to be really good, the ones that you're swinging for the fences, trying to get something really bold and punchy and powerful, you need to have releases that contrast it as well. And I think this one does. It's softer, it's not as punchy, there's more nuanced differences between a standard Laphroaig release in this bottle. And why not offer something like that to your consumers? I enjoy this. I think it can be an easy sipper if you want. If you want to sit back and think about it, there's definitely something to think through there with how it develops on the palate. You definitely have to like peat. I mean, this still is peated enough that you can't just give this to someone who's never had a scotch before and expect them to, not start coughing or wondering what you're giving them. I think they did well with this one. And the more I sip it, the more I like it, the more I just want to, kind of sit down and enjoy myself while I'm drinking it. On to the score. Laphroaig Cairdeas Warehouse 1, for me, gets a 8.1. I think it's great. It's not incredible by any means, but it is better than a lot of people give it credit for. That vanilla softness that comes through and kind of calms things down in this one is really refreshing in a peated scotch, especially with something so familiar as Laphroaig. I think they did a good job with this one. What grade do I give this release as a whole, all things considered? Not just the whiskey in the bottle, but the price, how easy it is to find, etc. In my area, it's been in my area, this thing has been fairly easy to find if you look hard for a few months. And in most places I can find it, it's around $100, give or take. For a yearly limited release from a renowned peated scotch brand, around $100 is pretty good. And the fact they're able to find this is a little surprising too, especially compared to years past for the Cairdeas releases. I'm gonna give this one a B+. Pretty much everything is working in its favor. It's all positive. There's nothing too negative about it, except for maybe not meeting the really high expectations that some folks had set based on previous year's releases of the Cairdeas. I think everything about it is good. I don't know that I think anything about it is spectacular. So B+ seems about right for me. What do you think about this release? If you really enjoy the standard 10 or the cast strength 10, if you've had previous Cairdeas releases before, how do you think this one measures up? Do you think it deserves the flack it's getting from some people? Or do you think it stands pretty well on its own merits? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, cheers.